Our guest speaker is Tatiana Cantrell, the Missing and Murdered Indigenous People Director for the Pinoleville Pomo Nation. Dr. Cantrell has worked with children and families in Lake and Mendocino Counties for the past 25 years. She spent the past several years working with local indigenous communities to address historical and generational trauma by removing barriers to services, forming collaborative relationships with community agencies, and individualizing family and case plans to meet people where they are. She is currently faculty member at Mendocino College in the Child Development Department, and she teaches at their Ukiah campus. The Missing and Murdered Indigenous Peoples Crisis refers to the disproportionately high rates of violence, including murder and disappearance, experienced by Indigenous people, particularly women and girls, in the United States and in Canada. This crisis is an issue with deep historical roots in colonization and its ongoing impacts. Locally, we can find its roots in the Mendocino Indian Reservation, overseen by soldiers at Fort Bragg, 1857 to 1864, which was once known in contemporary sources as, quote, the U.S. brothel, because children and women were sex trafficked there. And continues through the Indian schools that were in Mendocino County into the 20th century, like the Round Valley Indian School, where Native kids were removed from their families, became boarding students. The prevailing ideology was to kill the Indian, save the man. Kids were not allowed to speak their native language, participate in their native religion, or any of the cultural activities, and it was a form of cultural genocide. And now we're discovering, not yet locally, but certainly across Canada, they are finding mass graves of Native children who either died or were murdered at these boarding schools. So that is, and of course we continue to read locally of young Native women who have been disappeared. So it's a pleasure to have Dr. Cantrell here, and I'd like to turn it over to her.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for having me. I didn't really write a speech or anything, I have a few notes, but I just want to start out by saying that I wasn't sure about coming today. I myself am not Native. I do work for Pinoleville Pomo Nation as their Missing and Murdered Indigenous People Program Director. There are other people within our communities who are Native, who are Indigenous, who do the same work that I do. And so I just want to acknowledge them. Michelle Merrifield up in Round Valley. She is a Round Valley tribal member, and she has been doing this work for years and years and years. And Round Valley, if you're not familiar, has a huge disproportionate amount of missing and murdered Indigenous people. The most famous probably being Khadijah Britton, who's just, it's out there, and her grandfather, Ronnie, does a lot of work and a lot of speaking about that. So Michelle does great work up there. And then Katie Ray, who's also a Round Valley tribal member, but does great work in Lake County, and has been doing this work for many, many years. So I got blessings from a lot of people to come here and do this, and they said to come. So I just want that disclosure. I am not an Indigenous woman. My last name is Lily Rodriguez. I'm Hispanic. So I just want to put that out there. The work that we do is so very important, though. And it's just very recent. I think probably 10 years ago, most people had never heard MMIW or MMIP. Violence against Indigenous women dates back 500 years to the first European colonizers that came here. European colonists or colonizers had patriarchal views. They took Indigenous women and girls and men, but mostly women, as slaves, resulting in rape, violence, submission. And since then, it's just been a continual thing. Here in California, when the Spanish came in the 1500s to save the Indians with their missions, that was kind of the big beginning here in California of the kidnapping and murder of Indigenous women and men. A 2016 study found that more than 4 in 5 American Indian women will suffer some sort of violence in their lives. That's 84% of Indigenous women. 56% will experience sexual violence. Homicide is the number 2 cause of death for Indigenous people, men and women, in the United States. California is the 5th in ranking of missing and murdered Indigenous people. Our program and many of our programs in our tribes around here, we are a tri-county program, so we service Lake, Mendocino, and Sonoma counties. There are 10 federally recognized tribes here in Mendocino County, 7 in Lake County, and several more in Sonoma County. Our list is over 160 people. I thought about reading the names, but that would have taken my whole 30 minutes. And so I just want to acknowledge that it is a huge issue here. There are a lot of reasons. So obviously there is racism that has just been perpetuating for generations. It's hard to get law enforcement onto tribal lands. There are several reasons for that. California is a PL 280 state, which means that, and we're one of like 5 states, so this isn't a common thing, but this means that on reservations or tribal lands, the local law enforcement has concurrent jurisdiction with the tribe. So I will use Pinoleville as an example. So our land is in Ukiah, our reservation is in Ukiah. We don't have tribal police. We rely on the sheriff's department, Mendocino County Sheriff's Office, to service us. So if a crime happens on the reservation, we need to call the sheriff's department. This is true for many tribes. We're small, rural, we don't have tribal police. There's very few tribes that have that. And if they do, they don't really have the bandwidth to do anything about crimes. So we really rely on mostly the sheriffs because we're outside of city limits. There is no native tribal liaison in Mendocino County. We've asked the sheriff's department many, many times. I've set meetings, and every time they get canceled. So that makes it really hard. There's also a lack of trust, right? So I've only been with Pinoleville for about a year. Before that, I worked in Lake County with other tribes. And to this day, if a woman is having a domestic issue at her house, she's being beaten up by her boyfriend, they don't call the sheriffs, they call me. I get those phone calls at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, and so, because they're scared, because the sheriffs don't show up. And it was hard for me because, again, I'm not an Indigenous woman, so I don't have the same experiences. And I use the last name Cantrell because it's white presenting and it gives me more opportunities than if I was Dr. Rodriguez. People wouldn't take me as seriously. And so I use that. My friend Corinne Pierce, if you know her, she really pushes that. She's like, you use that white name and you speak, you make people listen because people are gonna think that you're white. And so I had a situation several months ago where I had to call the sheriff's office. And I live in the middle of a town, 45 minutes. Somebody broke into my house, a man, and I was alone with my assistant, Maya, this is my daughter. It took them 45 minutes to come to my house. I could have been dead. And so, and I was right there, and to think that they need to go further out onto our reservations, and our women and men are scared to call. Because one, they're not gonna get the response that other people would get. And two, it might not matter. And we've had that situation in Upper Lake where we had a tribal member who was being beaten by her boyfriend, and the fire department was the first ones on the scene, and they refused to go onto the reservation because they thought it was too dangerous. And by the time law enforcement came, it was too late. And that's something that happens consistently in our Native communities. And so that's obviously not working for us, right? And so we're looking for ways to change this, to change the dialogue, to figure out how we're gonna support our women and our children and our men. And it's not just women. So originally it was MMIW, you'd see that, the missing and murdered Indigenous women. But it's our men and our boys as well. A lot of my program focuses on human trafficking because that is really tied to MMIP. And our young boys are who is being targeted on video games and online, and so that's something that we're really focusing on now. A big thing that has happened in California is the feather alert system. If you are not familiar with that, Assemblyman James Ramos is he's great. He is a strong proponent of helping Indigenous communities, and he wrote the feather alert. It went into effect on January 1st, 2023. And it's just like the Amber Alert system or the Ebony Alert system or Silver Alert, but it's specific for Indigenous people. The problem when it first came out was that there was a whole list of criteria that had to be met before somebody could be considered missing and an alert would come out. And by that time, days had passed, right? And so, there was a lot of work around that, and that has recently changed as of January 1st, 2025. But that caused a lot of issues because now we have this system in place that is supposed to help us, right? So if I have a tribal member who is missing, I should be able to call the sheriff and say, hey, this person is missing. This is their picture, this is the description, like put it out there. And they'd be like, well, let's wait and see. A lot of times we are in small communities. So if a person maybe had prior contact with law enforcement for whatever reason, or maybe they were a known drug user or something, it wasn't taken seriously. They were like, oh well, they've done this before. We're gonna leave it alone. And then weeks would pass, and this person would still be missing, and then it wouldn't be a missing person anymore. It'd be a murdered person. And so that is not okay for us. That is not okay. And, I've had situations where I had missing youth, and I would call the sheriff, and they'd be like, well, let's give it 24 hours. And I'm like, this child is 12, and he is missing. And so, we did a lot of our own social media posting and our own outreach. And so till finally people started to listen. And so now the feather alert is if we are concerned, if you think that something might have happened to somebody, if, for whatever reason you call, and if they haven't helped you within 24 hours, you can call the Highway Patrol yourself, and they will put out the feather alert. One of the great things about my program that we've been able to do is we have an MMIP Tri-County Task Force now. That is comprised of tribes around Lake, Mendocino, and Sonoma counties. And then we started out with tribal representation. I believe we have 14 tribes now who have stepped in, and that's really hard to get people to trust and to come in and talk to each other, but it's, we've done that, and we have the CHP with us now, and they show up to every meeting. We have a tribal liaison out of our Ukiah office, Officer Marin, and he shows up to every meeting and he asks questions and he brings it back. And then we have a representative from NTAC, which is the alert system out of Sacramento CHP office, Sergeant Smith, George Smith, and he is responsible for training on the Feather Alert. We'll be hosting a big training in October in Ukiah. That will, information will go out, but he will be there to talk about it and to just discuss like how we can better support our communities. And a lot of it just is that building trust. I mentioned, Katie Ray and Michelle Merrifield. Every, tribe, we try to have somebody like a focal person. Like this is the person that you can call if you need help. And really now it's just focusing on that law enforcement piece, and making sure that somebody's gonna answer when we call the sheriff's office. And so that's kind of our big push right now, is trying to get accountability from Mendocino County sheriffs and figuring out how we can move forward with that so that we're not waiting days, so that our women and our girls and our men and our boys are not missing, so that they are safe. And so that's just a big part of what we are working on now. And yeah, I mean, that's just kind of where we're at. Yes.
Could you say what your strategies have been? Like, have you worked with the board of supervisors, mayors, like senators, reps? Like, what is?
So, we have reached out. Really, we're working with community organizations. Our big focus is not, it's really prevention and then and education. And so a big part of our grant that I work on is youth. And so we are in all the schools in Ukiah, educating our youth, educating parents, educating teachers. We've been in Lake County schools. We, this next school year will be in Laytonville, we'll be in Covelo. We have a lot of that going on, and so, and then we work a lot with community organizations. And so that's kind of where we're starting, is like people who work with people, basically, and making sure that everybody is educated and knowledgeable. A lot of people don't even know what MMIP is. A lot of people don't even know that there are still Indigenous people here.
Ain't that the truth?
I mean, just like the basic education of the fact that like they are still here. There are still Indigenous people here. And so that is a big thing that we are working on and focusing on. And I would like to bring Maya along. She is not a tribe member either, but she is adopted. She has lots of aunties from several tribes, and she goes to an education center that is run by a tribe. And she has been like segregated from other children at her school in Lake County because she goes with the Native kids, and we're gonna throw her with the, and I'm like, wow, okay. And so, which is, I mean, that's fine, those are her cousins, and but it just kind of shows like where the mindset still is in our communities, right? And so, and I have worked with children and families for a really long time, and I never want to, ignore the adults, but sometimes it's too late for them. And sometimes we need to work on the children. So for me, like making sure that our children are, have that cultural humility, and they have that understanding that, everybody's important and skin color doesn't matter, and our Indigenous neighbors are just as important as everybody else, is really important to me. And so, yeah, I'm a teacher. I teach at a school district. I teach at the college. I work for Pinoleville. I do a lot of different things, but I'm always really focusing on our children and our youth and making sure that they understand, because if you push that in enough, it it sticks in. Even if they're going home to a home that might not be as understanding or educated, we can still kind of give them that information and that knowledge and that power. And so we just do a lot of work with our youth, and a lot of work around culture. I'm not sure if you know Corinne Pierce, but she's an amazing woman. She's a famous basket weaver. I will never stop talking about how amazing she is. But she does so much work with our youth as well, and we really focus on culture. And so bringing that culture back to our youth. You know, we talked about the boarding schools. A result of that is the fact that we have lost culture. You know, so many generations, so many of our people don't speak the language anymore. You know, they don't have that connection. And so bringing that back to our youth is so important, and to our adults as well. We do elders groups, healing groups, and we do, you know, talking circles. We do so many different things, but making sure that our youth are part of the culture and ingrained and they feel empowered is so important, because they're less likely to be victimized when they feel part of their culture, and when they feel part of the community. And community is just really important. It's an Indigenous, you know, just really important in Indigenous culture to be part of the community. And so we want to just bring everybody in and make sure that they are seen and heard and are part of the community, because it's the ones that are on the outskirts that are not feeling included that are picked up, and they're more likely to be human trafficked, they're more likely to be victimized. And so a lot of our work is with our youth. Yes.
If you could have anything you want, what would you ask us to do to help you?
I think that if I could have anything, I would want just everybody to be aware of the fact that Indigenous people are still here. They have been here. They are victimized at such a high rate, and it needs to be out there. People need to understand and to know, because again, education and knowledge is power, and that's how we're going to stop it. So I will never stop talking about it, and I hope that other people, you know, spread the word. I mentioned earlier that Round Valley has been hit particularly hard with the MMIP epidemic, and I went up there for their MMIP event in May, and me and my two coworkers were the only people that showed up from outside the community. And so, and it was advertised a lot, and just nobody came. And I know that it's far, but if you see an event, come support. You know, just pass it along, support, show that support. They're gonna have another event in September. It's gonna be an MMIP big time. The date hasn't been set yet, but that I'll send out the flyer and just pass it along and show support. The more that we talk about it, the more that it's out there, I think is really important. I also feel like each tribe is really different as well, and so I want to point that out, right? So each tribe, while this affects everybody, it affects them differently, and they have their own beliefs and their own ways of handling it. So if you live near or work near an Indigenous community, call them up. Call them up and ask, you know, who is their, maybe they have like an office of victim, like an OVC department or a DV department or an MMIP department, and talk to them and ask them how they need support here. Because it varies. And so I think it's really important to go to the people who are doing the work.
Is there some list somewhere of where all these things, just a list of places we could contact?
I can send a list.
Okay.
Yeah,
That would be helpful. Then.
absolutely. Yes.
I want to know, what does your task force consist of that's being created?
So it is tribal representatives from different tribes. So some tribes send like their chairperson or somebody on their council, and sometimes it's their OVC person or victim services person, we have Highway Patrol, we have NCO, we have Lake Family Resource Center.
So like, I guess my question would be, in an event of a missing individual or relative, this task force that is said to have been put together, I'm a family member and I contact the task force, what actions does this task force take? Has that been set
So-
up as far as,
What
what
was,
is our response time?
yes,
Who is on the ground?
so we are working on several different things. One of the things that we're working on is that we want each tribe to have their own plan. Because we are so rural and so spread out. And so, Lake County tribes have already started their plans. And Katie Ray worked really hard on that, and so they're working on that. And Pinoleville, we're working on our plan right now too, and then we're gonna work with other tribes on their plan, so that each tribe will have a contact person. Then we're also working on a search team. I wrote for and just got another round of funding for our program. And so we will have people who can come out and help with the search and help set that up and get that going. And so one of the things I wanna have is an emergency number, like a 24-hour emergency line, right? That'll be on our website and it'll be passed out. And so if something happens at 3 in the morning, like you call that number and one of us is gonna answer and we're gonna get the ball rolling.
And is this something that the board of supervisors or even the mayor of these counties also have to approve to recognize that as federal entities are creating this to help our people because we have such a lack of response?
Yes, and so,
From the agencies, state agencies, county agencies. I mean, that's kind of like where we close the gap, right? Is
Yes.
that we set up all of these things.
absolutely,
Because we aren't being serviced like
Yes.
the rest of the citizens that are in the same county as us.
exactly. And so we have reached out to the Board of Soups in Mendocino County to figure out, how to meet and figure out how to make this happen. Like I said, we do have a really strong relationship with Highway Patrol right now, which is great because they are the ones who would do the feather alert. And so, yeah, we definitely want people to be aware that this is happening. And so, yeah, but we're gonna do it with or without them.
And then my last question is, where does non-federally recognized relatives fit in or disenrolled members? Are our federally recognized tribes advocating for them as well?
Absolutely.
Because
I
they are our
mean,
community as well.
personally, I have such a hard time with the unrecognized because who's the government to tell?
Yep.
Right, but anyways, no politics, so yes, no.
It's all
I don't wanna get fired, this is being recorded. So I just, yes, absolutely, and especially for our program, like we will help anybody who identifies as being Native in any sort of way, so, absolutely, yes.
So for that, with the disenfranchised communities that are in Lake County, that are no longer being, honored as members, are you going to the communities themselves without tribal council or going to these tribal offices that no longer service the disenfranchised people that are on the reservation? Do you go into these communities and do the work?
We have not,
Yes.
but it is on the list, absolutely. And so that's kind of where the task force comes in to kind of help, like, and if you want an invitation, please come to our next meeting.
We're from UM, so we don't get any kind of information at all. We had to come up to Mendocino County to hear you speak here. You know what I mean? And so you're talking about the task force that is in our county, but we have no knowledge or information about this.
Yes, I've definitely dealt with ICWA and ELM.
Yep.
But yes, so absolutely, and I will come out there. I've been out there for other things, but I will definitely come out there if you, I didn't bring any cards with me, but I can give you my number, and absolutely, I will come out there. I have Nick Garcia, I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, but he does a lot of our peer support, and so he works with our youth. And so he'll come out as well. We can do lots of stuff out there, so just, yeah.
And just for,
Yes.
and just for people in this room, I know there's a lot of small communities like this that haven't been exposed to Indigenous communities, even though they've been here 20, 30 years, 50, 40 years. Even though there's resources out there, haven't had this, didn't know about MMIW, MMIP, still refer and do land acknowledgement is in past tense.
Yes.
What could you give them, what could you tell them of something they could do today to change this,
The narrative.
the narrative, yeah? Because I think a lot of these small communities have been really affected by, I've been here for 5 generations, thing that
Yes.
needs to stop.
It does.
Yeah.
I think the people in this room, I appreciate you being here because I think that's like the first step. And you can see how small the group is here. And I think that speaks a lot to the community and the mindset of the community here.
And how few men are here?
That
really?
too,
Yeah.
yes. I think, again, it's really just being vocal. I know that it's hard to speak up a lot of times. I teach like ethics and we talk about this a lot about doing what's right even when it's hard and when you know, you're being opposed by everybody around you. And so I think that that is really important, that what you hear, like, do your research too, right? I think that there's so much out there, and just being informed and making sure that other people are informed. I know for me, like, my kids go to school and they learn things that are not true. And I'm sure a lot of us, right, are older, we're older, and so we, you know, we learned things that were not true. Which is why Fort Bragg is named Fort Bragg, right? He never even stepped foot in California. So I think that it's important to be educated and to do the research and to really figure out like what really happened, what is still happening in our indigenous communities. We tried to erase a whole group of people. And they're still here, and they were not erased. They're still here, but they're still being targeted at a disproportionately high rate. And so that is the issue. The issue is, how are we going to change that? How are we going to change the narrative? How are we going to make people aware that this is happening? How are we going to prosecute people who harm indigenous people anywhere, not just on indigenous land, but anywhere? And so it's just being knowledgeable, asking questions, and like I said, going to the local indigenous communities, right? Don't just ask me, like, I'm not even native, right? So I can't speak. I can speak for my program, I can speak for what I know, I can speak from my own personal experiences, but I can't speak for anybody else. And each tribe, again, is different. So you go down to Point Arena and you go talk to them and you ask them, how can I support, you know? Go to Lake County, there are several tribes that need help, right, and support, and so how can we support? You know, go to the events, speak up, yes.
There's a great resource, you know, many of you have heard me say it many times, but I'm gonna say it again. Red Bud resource.
Red Bud, yes.
Look at it.
Could
They
you say
have,
that
they
again?
make it, Red Bud resource.
They're in
They make it very easy for you. They have a calendar of events that's
Online.
open to the public. But they also have educational training. They also have beyond land acknowledgement, because you shouldn't do a land acknowledgement unless you're gonna do something to change
Yes.
habits. But Red Bud resource is really kind of one-stop shop for
Yes,
y'all.
absolutely.
Because you can see all the indigenous gatherings that are open to the public. They even have a thing that tells you how to come.
Yes.
Because a lot of people come empty-handed. Can I go to your house empty-handed? It's a lot of cultural learning, and that's, you just go look on there. It has a beautiful calendar. They'll send you out a newsletter that tells you all the cultural events happening in your area. If not, whoever knows me, call me. I'll let you know what's happening in this area. There's a beautiful indigenous camp happening
Right now.
right
yeah.
here in town, and right at Jug Handle,
Dog handles, yeah.
and tons of stuff. It would be nice if we had more folks come up, like, there's an indigenous camp going there.
And I'm
I
gonna be
can come bring offerings.
helping with that
I can bring
camp
some
next year.
fruit from my trees. So,
Yes.
just way of building connections.
And speaking of that camp, so that is Pinoleville's family camp. That's a yearly cultural camp. We just lost our funding. Our grant ended, so this is the last year of that funding. I have volunteered to find new funding, so we're gonna continue. But, you know, again, if you wanna donate to a nonprofit, we'll take your check. But, you know, also, yeah, come out and I know tribes post all over, so if you're on social media, anytime there's a big time event, there was the Tully Boat Festival in Lakeport last week, come and learn, because they will welcome you. Yes.
And a lot of them are posted publicly
Yes.
because we want to change the narrative
Yes.
of what people think about our tribal people. And so we do these events for learning purposes for the public
For the
to come in
public.
to see who we are and what we do spiritually, community-wise, all of that stuff. And so a lot of people think every tribe has casino gaming money, we're rich. That's not what it is. And so that narrative we need to change, because that's what everybody always thinks. Well, they're tribal, they have money to help themselves. That's not what it is. And so just learning a little bit more of how things work and you know, and coming to these places because we are offering it to you all. You know, to come in and take what you need from there, you know, and so we do a lot of different dancing, and that's what it is it's to heal all the people as one, you know, instead of segregating ourselves and taking ourselves out of community, we're bringing everybody back into community.
And just a little plug, if you're going to the Art in the Garden, this is the first time ever they've had Indigenous artists. And they've been welcomed, and a community member paid for their entry fee so they can go there without paying.
Oh, that's good. How long are you at Jug Handle for?
I'm not at Jug Handle, I just
okay.
know all my relatives are there.
Okay,
Been
and
there
how
till
long are
Monday.
they?
They're there until Monday.
Oh, okay,
And on the art subject, we are doing an MMIP art project with Corrine Pierce. And so this started in January. We have monthly, it's the second Friday of the month at Pinoleville. No art or quilting experience needed. These are art quilts, and they represent MMIP. So some people are doing portraits of somebody they lost. Some people are just doing messages. And these will be and then we're also doing outreach to tribes. So we've been to several different tribes throughout Lake and Mendocino Counties. These will be done in December, and then in January there's going to be an art show at the Ukiah Art Center, which is going to highlight these quilts, and then other art mediums. We're putting out a call to art for Indigenous artists around MMIP. And so that's another way that you can come to the art show, come support in January. MMIP month is in May. Maya here assists in every event that I go to. She does our outreach table, and she probably
Great job, Maya, thank you.
she could probably describe MMIP better than a lot of people in this room. But she reminded me yesterday that MMIP is every day. It's not just in May. And so we are going to be doing events every month to make sure that it's not forgotten, and it is every day.
Every second, every minute.
Yes. And so those go out all over social media, all over everywhere. So when you see those and you can come and support. And it's really, for me, when you talk to those mothers who have lost their children, it changes your perspective, I think, a little bit. And, you know, right now, I can talk to you about it until I'm blue in the face, and you're not gonna understand, because it's not you. But when you talk to people who have experiences, who have lost people, who are still waiting years later, you know, trying to find their daughter or their son or their cousin or their aunt, whoever it is, like, it changes your perspective. And so I think that is really important. These are real people. These are our neighbors, you know, our friends, people that we pass in the grocery store, like, it's everywhere. And so I think that is just really important.
All right, thank you. Our thanks to Dr. Cantrell and her assistant, Maya.